Andy Kendeigh along with Sean Callahan. Let's talk coordinators as we finally get a chance to speak with both the offensive and new defensive coordinators at Nebraska. First, let's start with the offense. Marcus Satterfield, what was your grand impression leaving his session today?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is Nebraska is going to run a huddle now.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know kind of the direction of what Rule wants to do, but I think Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield have studied the Big Ten enough to know, you can't consistently win with just an up-tempo, no-huddle type look. You can win some games, but that Wisconsin game that we were at, games like that, Iowa, you need an offense that's built to win in November. And every November is different in this league. There's been some nice Novembers. There's been some really bad Novembers. And I think they're building this to long haul and win. And it's kind of fascinating to me that Wisconsin's going to the air raid, which we'll see if that sticks, by the way.
Yeah, we'll see if that sticks, right.
And Nebraska is going to go with a fullback and tight ends.
Yeah, more pro-style offense. And I thought it was interesting when he mentioned the huddle, how much he emphasized the leadership abilities of the quarterback really come out when you have to huddle up. And that's where you need a quarterback with a voice.
Yeah, and I thought he was just really dynamic speaking on that subject, just how
you
important
can tell he's passionate
about just the leadership skills that you take away. Because when you are no huddle, basically it's just coach control from the box, and you take it out of the hands, and you're looking up to the box, you're looking back to the field, you're looking back to the box, and there's really no player-to-player talk. It's box to player to, and I think he wants the players to kind of take more ownership on the field, and it's fine. I mean, I think this league in general, too, it's really hard to be a high play count team and consistently win, because if you live by that, you die by it. And we saw that with Nebraska when they play teams like Minnesota, and they grind those games out and they take you out of what you want to do. It's hard to win.
Yeah, and he embraces the fullback. That's music to the Nebraska fans.
Yeah, who is the fullback?
Yeah,
my money is on Luke Lindenmeyer. I think he's a candidate for fullback on this roster.
We're breaking down the fullback position. I love it.
But it's not like you'd say we're going to go out and recruit a high school fullback, because nobody really plays fullback in high school. You got to look for a tight end or a linebacker that could project.
He's athletic enough to be back there
in that role. So that will be fun to see.
Yeah, I was interested, too, about the quarterback run game. I thought his answer, Marcus Satterfield, when talking about the quarterback run game, doesn't want to live and die by it, but he says it is crucial to have a quarterback that can run.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about those 3rd and 6 type situations where you need a first down, and sometimes the quarterback can just get it for you with his legs, and that can light your offense. When you get that first down, a lot of times, that's the difference. And when you have that run game with a quarterback, that adds to that element. To me, the more you hear about quarterback run game, the more it points towards Jeff Sims having an inside track at things. He's 6'4", he's 220, he runs, he throws. He's kind of like a Lamar Jackson-style quarterback in the NFL. Now, Casey Thompson can run, but he's not that big. And can he run at the level they want? I mean, and he's not going to be here for the spring. So there is a lot. There's 4 quarterbacks, Andy, on this roster that have started at Power 5 schools. So they have a lot of options at quarterback, but I think Jeff Sims, just from my handicapping of things, has the edge going in.
Yeah, especially with Casey Thompson coming off that surgery. Marcus Satterfield also saying the position of need on offense is wide receiver in terms of building depth. Defensively, Tony White said the same thing in terms of the question being asked. His emphasis is you can never have enough defensive linemen.
Yeah, and I think when you look at Nebraska, losing Colton Feast, losing Garrett Nelson on the edge, they've lost some big holes. Ty Robinson's back, though. He's familiar with Ty Robinson. That's the guy up front they got to build around. They've talked about Nash Hutmacher. They're bringing in some transfer portal guys, but they've got to get that defensive line figured out, kind of who they're going to be, because you're not going to win in this league, Andy, without a defensive line.
Yeah, Tony White also talking about the 3-3-5. Obviously, everybody knows about what that is. But he wasn't saying that it's strictly a 3-3-5, but the format or the template is flexible enough to have players that can expand and do some different things. It doesn't have to be 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 DBs.
Yeah, you got to be careful, I think. I mean, I think there's a lot of video game defensive coordinators out there, and that just because they understood the 3-3-5 and
they use it in Madden.
And Madden,
yeah.
But I think it's multiple. I think there's a lot of versatility, and you build a scheme to win games. And, last year, a lot of people don't realize this, but under Bill Bush, Nebraska was in 3-3-5 70% of the snaps. So it is what it is. I think we can get a little caught up trying to be video game defensive coordinators here and pulling out the grease boards and asking these extensive X's and O questions, because I think they're going to be pretty multiple, and they're going to figure out what works with what they have.
Yeah, Tony White said they'll play with 5 down linemen if that means that gives them the best chance of winning. The other thing that Tony White was asked about was the guys they have in the room. I thought something that really stood out. He watches film and he's expecting a team that only won 4 games last year to be a little to have some holes on defense. But he said, this defensive group, the guys they have coming back are pretty darn good.
Yeah, you look at Nebraska, and I mean, once again they were close, and 2 years in a row, a lot of games fell the same way. But the Minnesota game, the Wisconsin game, the Georgia Southern game, the Northwestern game. There's 4 games right there that you can make a case Nebraska could have won all 4, and they'd be an 8-win team. So the line to 8 wins last year wasn't as far as I think people thought. And I think if they just figure out who they are and build things the right way, they can get this team to a bowl game. It's not out of the question, but there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, in terms of the guys he mentioned, Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker, and Luke Reimer he mentioned. He also pointed out the defensive backs. There's some talent coming back in this.
Quentin Newsome.
Quentin Newsome is a guy
Miles
to build
Farmer.
about. I mean, there's some talented guys that you can have sprinkle in some new pieces, and this defense is going to be pretty darn good next year, I think, under Tony White. All right, moving ahead. What do we got in front of us in terms of the calendar, and what do Husker fans have to look forward into in terms of what's next?
Well, a few big mile markers, Andy. January 16th is the draft deadline. It's the portal deadline. So those are kind of the key dates. Workouts at Nebraska also begin that week. So the players, a lot of them are going to be moving back to Lincoln over the weekend, that next weekend, and then begin the workouts that Monday, Tuesday to get going. And then the classes start January 23rd. Why that's important is your transfers. So there's still a few live lines in the water right now on transfer portal targets. Those guys, you'd like to get them here for classes on January 23rd. So that's why that's a big day. Then I think after that, you got to look at March 20th, that week. That is the week after UNL spring break, and that is when Nebraska more than likely would begin their spring practice.
Yeah, and that all leads up to the spring game. That is April 22nd at Memorial Stadium.